Yes, we have come together to the most important video in world history. Why? World War I. Even if you have never watched any part of world history before, watch World War I, because how a war can be started that the whole world can enter from scratch. Now, before we dive into the story of World War I, you need to understand this. World War I is ending the era of empires, with the Austro-Hungarian Empire disintegrating like a cookie. The Ottoman Empire is falling apart. Russia is also beginning to disintegrate. Germany, whenever I remember, they are changing Kayseri with democracy. Germany is an empire, but instead of Kayseri governed by Germany, a democracy system is coming. Now look, we need to talk about the map here. When you look at the year 1914, Russia covers a vast area. The Ottoman Empire is still advancing into the Arabian Peninsula. At the same time, in Mesopotamia, there are very vast areas. On the map, we see the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which we will not see by the year 1918. The map of Africa is also in this situation. At the moment we end World War I, you will notice that new countries like Ukraine and Poland emerge, and they start to take up space on the map. A Soviet Union emerges, known as the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. The Austro-Hungarian Empire has long since collapsed. Brand new places have emerged, and Austria and Hungary occupy small areas. Poland has expanded its territory. Germany has of course emerged as Czechoslovakia, and within Germany, the borders have now become quite small. In fact, Germany does not experience as significant a loss of territory as the Ottoman Empire, but when you look at the land, we see that Germany is equal to the new territories of the Ottoman Empire, now called Turkey. Therefore, World War I changes the map of Europe. The map, which was once made up of empires, is gradually turning into the modern map of today, composed of countries. Well, let's say for 20 years, because when World War I ended, there was a defeated Germany. But this Germany will emerge once again in World War II. Let me tell you, one of the definite losers is the Ottoman Empire. Let me explain World War I to you, from scratch. The video will be a bit long, but what is World War I? Welcome. First of all, it did not start in 1914. It actually started earlier. It began with the Serbs, and the tensions between Serbia and Austria-Hungary, but that's a different story. Although it seems to have ended in 1918, it actually led to World War II due to failed peace agreements. The absolute winner is America, because towards the end of the war, in the last year, it intervenes by asking if there is still a war going on there and takes over. It is the characterless Italy, because while trying to support this one and that one, it suddenly sits at the table of the winners. The biggest loser is the Ottoman Empire, because it loses a large part of its territories. The most treacherous, dishonorable, and vile is England. In between, I can just take a piece of Ottoman land here and there. I can take from there too, colonize and take from there as well. Therefore, it was an incredible war. An incredible war. In fact, before this war, France and Germany were already at odds with each other. They clashed in 1870. And the region called Alsace-Lorraine, which belongs to France and has quite valuable minerals, was seized by Germany. France is already going to war with Germany. After World War I ends, France regains this area with the Treaty of Versailles. Austria-Hungary is a mess. 15 nations together. There are Poles, Dutch, Serbs, and more. They have all become a mix in that melting pot. But opposite them, against the German race, are the Serbs, Slavs, and Russia supporting them. So the core of the war is the conflict between the German race and the Slavic race. In the 1800s, there are three empires in the region. The Russians are trying to enter Europe. Austria-Hungary is holding the door to Europe, and the Ottoman Empire. Now, in such an environment, there is the Eastern Wing, which is based on the Ottoman and Russia, and the Western Wing, which refers to the tension between France and Germany. Europe is already tense from both ends. It's looking at a matchstick. It's in a situation where it wants a spark to enter the war. Until the year 1878, Bosnia and Serbia were under Ottoman control. A war is being waged against the Russians. Then the Berlin Agreement is made. The Serbs, who are the snakes of the World War, Serbia, both initiates the war, and is also one of the biggest beneficiaries of it. In 1912, during the Balkan War, the Ottomans also take Skopje and Monastir. They are in good spirits. The Ottomans are no longer a problem for them, but Austria-Hungary is a problem. So the Ottomans are relieved from the east. They are not comfortable from the west. The Ottomans are not trying to assimilate the Serbs. In other words, they are not trying to change their religion. Austria-Hungary is trying to change their religion. For this reason, the Serbs hate Austria-Hungary 10 times more than they hate the Ottomans. In 1914, the map of Europe is as you see on the screen, and Austria, the Hungarian Empire, is already the Habsburg family. The Kingdom of Germany belongs to them, the Archduchy of Austria belongs to them, Bohemia, Spain belongs to them. They have ruled all of these in history. They have ruled the Holy Roman Empire, the German Empire, Hungary, Croatia, Mexico, Naples, the Kingdom of Portugal, and so on. All of these have been ruled by them. Now the Habsburgs are strong. Franz Joseph is on the throne. He rules both Austria and Hungary. So, both empires are in the hands of Franz Joseph, but his heir is his nephew Franz Ferdinand. Franz Ferdinand is not as militarily aggressive as Franz Joseph. He is a type who wears a military uniform. He never sits wearing royal crowns or cloudy things. He is a dictator very eager to play soldier and is quite old. So by the time we reach 1914, Franz Joseph has been on the throne for 66 years and is not stepping down. The Austro-Hungarian Empire is a beloved empire in Europe because neither the Russians nor the Ottomans can enter Europe without surpassing them. They are holding the door to Europe. Of course, there are Czechs, Romanians, Slavs, Poles, some Dutch, Italians, and Romanians. Everyone is within the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and they are keeping track of everyone. There is no democracy or anything. The peoples of Austria-Hungary treat the rest of the population like dogs. Well, of course, this is actually boiling inside by the time we reach 1914. The Austro-Hungarian Empire will not be able to survive World War I. In other words, they will disintegrate. During this period, Serbia wants the Austro-Hungarian Empire to disintegrate so that it can establish an independent kingdom. Russia is also saying, okay, I support you, just try to separate. During this period, the Serbs have a commander named Dragutin Dimitrijević. This man wants to stage a coup, and his own king, the king of Serbia at that time, is alone against Austria. He is a puppet of Austria. They kill him. In 1903, they assassinate him and stage a coup. The Serbs have tasted blood, just like a hunting dog that has tasted the prey once. There is no good to come from it anymore. The Serbs are the dogs of Europe. They say, if we can kill our own king, we can kill other kings too. They say, we will stage a coup in Europe and establish Yugoslavia. Let's create a Slavic kingdom. They are putting someone named Peter on the throne. Dragutin serves him. But of course, Dragutin is actually undermining the country from behind. Their new target is to kill the Austro-Hungarian Empire, to kill the king. They say, let's overthrow him with a coup and take over completely. A man named Gavrilo. Princip hears a rumor that Franz Ferdinand, the nephew of the Austro-Hungarian king, will go to Bosnia to ascend the throne. He says, I will kill him in Bosnia. This is how the assassination begins. In Bosnia, during training, I had seen a few bridges, and in 1914, his uncle, in fact, Franz Ferdinand, is already in line for the throne. Therefore, these Serbs are planning a murder with Gavrilo Princip and his friends to create something sensational and disrupt the line of succession. Dragutin goes to Dimitrijević's ear. He could stop it if he wanted to. He does not stop it. He allows the assassination. The assassination is successful. In fact, the assassination is not successful at first. They warn Franz Ferdinand. He ignores it. Then they place a bomb on the bridge he will cross. The bomb explodes on the bridge. Nothing happens to him. Then he immediately goes to the town hall. At the exit of the town hall, Gavrilo Princip pulls out his gun and shoots him. Bang, bang, bang. He didn't take it seriously, the late one, that he would be killed. Of course, this assassination complicates things a lot. The date he was killed is June 28, 1914 in Sarajevo. Don't forget this date. June 28 also marks the end of the war. When the man is killed, You have actually killed the person who would play at the top of Austria-Hungary's hierarchy. You are declaring war on Austria-Hungary. When such a thing happens, Serbian schools and churches are raided, and 200 Serbs are executed. Austria-Hungary wants to subdue the Serbs, so that this incident is quickly covered up and no one gets inspired for independence. On one hand, they are concerned about whether Russia is behind this or not. Meanwhile, Austria-Hungary is calculating the situation should the Serbs declare war. Actually, there is nothing in Serbia a spit could kill. But is there Russia behind it or not? Will the Russians provide support? The Serbs are asking Russia from behind. Of course, Austria-Hungary is unaware of this. Russia says they will provide support. Austria-Hungary is making a foolish move that starts World War I. Germany turns around and says Germany is led by the German Kaiser. Think of it like Caesar. It's a dictatorial logic. The German Kaiser turns around and says, we will attack Serbia, but if Russia attacks us, will you join us in the war? Germany. The German Kaiser is on vacation. He is listening so casually, saying, yeah, we can do it, we can do something. Germany doesn't consider the possibility of war at all. They say, okay, we are with you, without taking it seriously. Austria is acting as if they are with us. Meanwhile, Gavrilo Princip has been captured. The fool who shot Franz Ferdinand. They are putting him on trial. He says that Dragutin Dmitrievich and other Serbian commanders were aware of it. He sells them out immediately. The situation is escalating. Austria-Hungary quickly gathers and presents harsh conditions to Serbia. They issue a strong note. The goal is already to provoke a conflict. On July 23rd, the whole world is on vacation. Alban Kaiser is on vacation. All ambassadors are on vacation. And when they demand very harsh things, the Serbs. On July 24th, they turn back and send a telegram to Russia. They say, Hacha, we are going to war, just so you know. The Russians say, go ahead, my lions, we are behind you. But Austria-Hungary already wants a war. They want to crush Serbia. On July 28th, Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Look, it's been a month. In just a month and a half, all of Europe will be at war. Everyone is joining in. Those who see the light will dive in. July 28th, that is, 1 month after Franz Ferdinand was killed in Sarajevo on June 28th, Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Russia is providing support, because it anticipates that France will also join in with them. When it turns into a war, Germany is like, what the hell is happening? There is a strange situation because Germany has this problem. To the west is France. They are already hairy because of Alban Loren. They can go to war at any moment. There are Russians. Russians do not like them at all. Germany is toast. Actually, all of Europe is trying to start and end the war between Austria-Hungary. Germany is quickly gathering. They are doing the math. A year is needed for the Russians to enter the war. They can't gather and enter the war at once. Armies will pass through their own lands. They will pile up at the border. Winter will come. They say, well, they are making a very clever move. First, they say, we can't fight both Russia and France. Let's finish off France first. When the Russians come, we will hit them with the entire army. Germany has already made 3 foolish mistakes in its history. This is the second one. The third one you will see in World War II. One of them I mentioned in a video 2 videos ago. Prussia was involved in an action that shaped the map of Europe. Anyway, do they declare war on France? But of course it doesn't happen just like that. On August 1st, they declare war on Russia. On August 3rd, 1914, they declare war on France. Italy says, I won't get involved. And Germany enters into war with both Russia and France. Austria-Hungary is providing support. Austria-Hungary is already at war with Serbia. Serbia, Russia, and France formed one front. The Austro-Hungarian Empire and Germany formed another front. At that time, 10 million soldiers were called up in Europe. 10 million men were called to the army. Now, from here on, think of 250,000 dead every time I mention a conflict. So Germany and France are in contact with each other. 250 soldiers are dying continuously. It's going on like that. Now, there is England. England is the master of the seas at that time. I mentioned this in the previous video. The ports are under their control. They are exploiting even as far as India. They have colonies in Africa. They have colonies in the Far East. England actually doesn't need to enter the war. They don't care about the war either. And England is strong at sea. There is no navy that can defeat it at sea, but since they are islands, no one attacks them on the shore either. Their navy protects them. No one dares to attack England, but England should attack someone. Why should it attack? Because most of the colonies, especially in India, are close to Russia and France. They are also under Russian and French control. As long as they do not get along well with them, these colonies are under threat. And he is doing some math, saying that if Germany wins, we cannot control the ports in Europe. Germany will not allow access to these ports in any way. In this calculation, they actually see themselves a bit more on the side of Russia. More precisely, they see themselves on the side of France. They don't care much about Russia. It seems like these things take a long time, but on August 1st, Germany declared war on Russia. On August 3rd, Germany declared war on France. On August 4th, the day after, England and the British Commonwealth completely declared war on Germany. Here, America gets involved in the matter because England, in terms of entering and exiting the war, has its newly independent cousin in America. America says, I won't get involved in the war, my friend. It doesn't concern me. Now, during this period, there hasn't been a war in Europe for 40 years. Everyone has attacked the banks. An economic crisis has begun. There are brand new weapons. For years, no one has tried it. So we are entering a brand new era, but we are entering it with an economic crisis. Europe is scarce. Europe will not find iron. Europe will not find bread. When there are trench wars in Europe, people will die of hunger. We will experience an incredible 4 years, the darkest 4 years of the world, which I am describing to you right now. So what are the Serbs doing during this time? The Serbs are pillaging villages. The Serbs are raping women. The Serbs are stealing. The Serbs are looting. The Serbs are one of the most despicable, dishonorable, and disgraceful societies in history, one of the 3 societies. One is the Armenians. I am speaking from the perspective of Armenians. The Greeks have also committed genocide in Cyprus. I will explain the Armenian genocide to you shortly. That lie. The month of August is passing very sourly. On August 5th, Montenegro declares war on Austria-Hungary. The very next day, on August 6th, Austria-Hungary declares war on the Russians. Germany is on its side. Serbia declares war on Germany. On August 9th, Montenegro declares war on Germany. On August 11th, France declares war on Austria-Hungary this time. The very next day, Serbia experiences its first conflict with Austria-Hungary. Now, Austria-Hungary underestimates the encounter between the Serbian army and the Austria-Hungarian army on August 12th. The Serbs, of course, have also received support from the Russians. They are dispersing this army with artillery, and the Austria-Hungarian army is breaking apart. The Serbs suffer 130,000 casualties despite this. Suddenly, the situation escalates. While it was said that the war would remain between these 2 countries, things grow larger as the Serbs achieve success. Everyone immediately starts doing the math. At that time, Germany has 4 million soldiers. Their armies have not yet grown larger. France also has 4 million. Therefore, while Germany attacks the 4 million strong army with its own 4 million army, they receive news that the Russians have sent 3 million soldiers as reinforcements from the east. Germany is doing the math. We should divide into 2. Thus we must defend the east and west separately. Germany is technologically advanced at that time. They have large cannons called Big Bertha, which are pulled by 36 oxen and 36 horses. But the French fortifications along the German border are very strong. They cannot get past these defenses. Then the thought occurs to them, there is Belgium to the north. Belgium is neutral in the war. Let's take Belgium. From there we can infiltrate behind the French border's defenses. This way, we can strike the French fortifications from behind. No reinforcements will come. They are taking Belgium this time. Germany kills 6,500 Belgians. About 150,000 Belgians are fleeing to Britain. Boarding ships. Britain naturally takes care of the Belgians. On August 21st, 100,000 British soldiers are coming to Belgium's aid by ship. Thus, Germany is encountering the British here for the first time. There is now an actual war between Britain and Germany. A 100,000-strong army has arrived, while there is a 250,000-strong German army facing them. They are in a great hurry. They want to bring down France as soon as possible before Russia arrives. Therefore, this urgency cost them exactly 250,000 soldiers, because you can fight in 2 ways in war. This changes the course of World War I. I will also tell you about Gallipoli and Çanakkale in this video. You either make an open assault or dig trenches. Long trenches. Very long ones. And you fire at the enemy from within these. Germany is not digging trenches. They rely on all their artillery and try to advance boldly. You are running in open terrain while the other side has dug in and is waiting for you, picking you off one by one. Remember that at that time there are already machine guns and artillery. Machine guns are the main actors of World War I, firing bullets rapidly. As I mentioned again, in the defense of Gallipoli, these machine guns, the mitrailleuses, are very important. Germany thinks we have plenty of soldiers anyway, and Hitler will do the same. They are trying to advance 30-40 kilometers a day. By the time we reach September from August, Germany is now 45 kilometers away from Paris. Paris has been evacuated and the capital is being moved to Bordeaux. In this way, Germany is actually getting tired. I mean, you will run 30 to 40 kilometers, fight, and then go another 30-40 kilometers the next day. You get worn out naturally. There is only 45 kilometers left to Paris, but the German army is no longer agile. Why are they not agile? At that time, there are not many trucks and vans, like in World War II. They are using horses, and the horses are dying. When you are far from your lands, you are on foreign soil. No one is properly giving you food. Only if there are places you can loot. The supply of the army and the transportation of heavy guns and heavy weapons are also becoming difficult. Germany will use train horses towards the end of World War I. But there are no train horses here. Germany's tracks are already different from the French tracks. It's even more different in Russia. Therefore, Germany is starting to get tired. While France and Germany are fighting on 3 fronts, they are clearing the way for the first front, the Eastern Front. They are quickly using all their strength to transport soldiers by train, of course, using the train tracks. They quickly transport them to the front of the Western Front by train. This allows the German army to advance freely for a while. But in the places Germany has occupied, they find neither food, nor horses, nor weapons. In fact, France is cleverly pulling the war towards a thicker, stronger French army towards the defensive line. The German army is starting to split into 2 fronts, as the First Army and the Second Army, creating a gap between them. And splitting its power in this way is a clever move by France. On August 23rd, Japan is managing the war against both Austria-Hungary and Germany, but we'll come back to that later. The real story is on September 5th. On September 5th, the German army. They reach a place called the Margu River, and this is the French defensive line. Now, crossing the river is not that easy in September. Moreover, unless you cross the river with your cannons and machine guns, you cannot take down a French army that is establishing a defensive line on the other side of the river. Germany can't even descend to this river. They remain on the other bank. The French are defending very well because they are defending their homes. They are raining death with the machine guns they have. Germany can't even stick their heads out. They are already hungry, tired, and can't even lift their heads out of the trenches. And the French discover something here. Normally, at the beginning of the war, they use balloons and planes for reconnaissance. There are no weapons, machine guns, or bombs. The French come up with the idea of attaching bombs to planes. They see that Germany is already lined up like little sticks along the coast. Their positions are clear. They are piling up and putting bombs on the plane. In the first bomb dropped, only 3 Germans die, and 4 or 5 more are killed. But the French say that dropping bombs from the plane is easy. They start bombing Germany. Germany is falling apart like cookies. Germany doesn't even know how to defend itself against the bombs coming from above. Until that time, dropping bombs from planes. The French come up with the idea of dropping bombs from planes in World War I. I will explain shortly. Germany is also using chemical weapons. They come up with gas bombs. But of course, the main story near the Marne River is Germany being bombed from above, being shelled. Machine guns. The German army is falling apart like cookies there. If Germany could break through that line, they would have won World War V. When you look at the sources of great historians, they say that this is the place where Germany lost the war. Oh my God, the offensive ends there. For 3 years, this place turns into a front of trench warfare. Therefore, winter is coming. Germany starts to struggle with hunger and disease this time. When Germany gets cornered here, they begin to loot. There are already places of looting in Belgium. The French take everything they find from the Belgians, enough to starve 8 million French people, their cows, bread, wheat, beds, even the patients' beds and serums in hospitals, everything. They take the patients' beds in hospitals and let them die. They loot whatever they can find, because you will establish a defense line on someone else's land for 3 years. Of course, if you are a barbarian, if you are savage, you need to hold on. Don't be fooled by the fact that France and Germany formed a united Europe now. They are great enemies. Germany takes whatever it finds.
It is raining. Many French and Belgian people are either migrating or dying of hunger because the Germans are stealing everything they have. While the Germans are doing all this, the French and Italians say, "Hey, why don't you put pressure on the Germans from the church? Look at what they are doing to the people." The Pasha has never condemned the Germans during World War I or World War II. In fact, the Germans are distancing clergymen from the church who speak negatively about them. The Pasha turns away. What is happening over there? If the Germans are killing a few people, there is no problem. This is war. The Netherlands is receiving many Belgian immigrants, remaining neutral in the war. But the Germans realize that if this war is between England and France, it will not be among the Germans. He says, "I must spread this war to the world. If I stir up the British, naval power and army in their colonies, like in India, the British will pull back a bit. If the British withdraw, we can take on the French one-on-one." Therefore, they are eyeing the places that are British colonies and distant lands of the British to see what trouble they can stir up. The Germans are going quite mad over Kayseri during this period. He even says that if we were to hit America, like hitting the eastern coasts of America, New York, and so on, if we stir things up a bit in America, that is, if we expand the war a little more in the Pacific, submarines and such, but the Germans at that time were involved in some very crazy plans. England knows that the Germans have a port in China and that they draw strength from it. They want to strike this port but do not want to send troops there. They ask Japan for help. Japan responds, "Go ahead and strike the German port in China." Now you are Japan. The port belongs to the Germans, but it is on Chinese soil. Therefore, you would be declaring war on China. 60,000 Japanese soldiers, along with 2,000 British, are attacking the Chinese port defended by 5,000 soldiers. The Japanese are officially taking land from China. In fact, they are going even further. The Japanese have already lost their minds. It tells China that you will trade with us from now on. The Japanese are seizing all the territories in the region that are under German control. The Germans take a hit from here, but in this war, Austria and New Zealand are always involved together. After this, the Japanese thrive for 20 years. They say, if we can seize something, then yes, we can also make moves in the Pacific. We can also make moves in America. Until Pearl Harbor in World War II. I will tell you about Pearl Harbor. These Japanese are crazy. They send battleships to America, which is just madness. They've really lost their minds. So, are the Japanese entering the war as well? At that time, India is a major colony of England. The Germans are also attacking India this time. In other words, they want to weaken the English from India. At first, the Germans think they have devised a useful plan because they are slowing down the English. But then, English cruisers arrive in the area, and they are very fast, causing the Germans to be overwhelmed. Therefore, the Germans say that we cannot fight at sea. Let's focus on land warfare and not take action. The Suez Canal comes to their minds because the Suez Canal is a place you can launch an attack from land, and it is essential for British ships to pass through in order to trade. They say that if we attack the Suez Canal from land, we will cut off the British's supply from India and weaken their power. And of course, this brings to mind the question, they say we are at war with France. Those huge Germans, we are at war with the French. If we also send soldiers here to distant lands, our strength will weaken to us. Therefore, at that time, they say that the Ottomans should attack this region. The Ottomans are not even at war. The Ottomans should enter the war. The Ottomans should fight for the Germans. The Ottomans should do this. Meanwhile, perhaps India can also be dealt with. We can do something about India as well. At that time, the Ottomans' Fourth Army is near Suez. There are 20,000 soldiers. The Ottomans are entering the war for the Germans, and they are directing 20,000 soldiers to the region. 20,000 Ottoman soldiers are arriving in the region under the command of Kemal Pasha, but they face 9 British ships and 30,000 Indian soldiers. The Indians are also greeting them with machine guns. This war lasts for 3 years and 10 months. For 3 years and 10 months, throughout the entirety of World War I, the Ottoman Empire is here. On that day, 1,200 martyrs. At that time, the Germans were also clashing with the English in South Africa. Just as Ottoman soldiers were used for the Germans, Southern Arabs are being used for the English. This time, a civil war is starting in South Africa. In the World War, everyone is entering the fight. As South Africa becomes chaotic, the English are pulling 30,000 soldiers from Australia and expelling the Germans from the African continent in 1915. The Germans are trying to enlist 1 million black soldiers from Africa just to maintain their hold on the continent. 200,000 die from exposure and starvation. The scale of the First World War in Africa is a truly ugly environment. There is this ridiculous situation of black people being pitted against each other, and think about it this way. Now the Germans are forcibly enslaving black people to fight for them. The English are killing them so that they do not fight for the Germans. Unfortunately, all kinds of black people are dying in a war that has nothing to do with them. In Africa, there is a lose-lose situation in the war, not a win-win. This loss is entirely bad. The black people in Africa did not know for whom they were fighting. 14 million Indians are participating in the war as British soldiers in England. In other words, they are being recruited into the military. The Indians actually don't know why they are fighting, my strange ones. While Africans perish in the heat, the Indians begin to perish on the left side of Europe. Only the black Africans who are part of France's defense are happy, because they will not have to engage in many battles until the end of the war. In fact, a large portion of the black people you see in France today were brought to France during the period of World War I. France is thus gaining light black citizens. So if you ask why France didn't send these black citizens back after World War I, because the Germans are burning and destroying their villages so that they are forced to fight. In other words, the people have no relatives, spouses, friends, villages, or land to return to. And France, at the end of World War I, kept its soldiers inside, thinking that we would need them again the next day. Now they are settling in France today. And we come to the Ottoman Empire. Here are Sultan Reşat, Enver Pasha, and Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. Now we will understand why Mustafa Kemal is a great commander. The situation of the Ottoman Empire is a bit complicated now, because that period was already a weak time for the Ottoman Empire, who is on the throne. Mehmet Reşat reigned from 1909 to 1918. However, just before him, Abdülhamid there ascended to the throne in 1876. And he is, in his own way, a sultan who actually tried to build hospitals and schools. However, during the 33-year reign of Sultan Abdülhamid II, the Ottoman Empire lost territory in Tunisia, Egypt, Serbia, Montenegro, and Romania, amounting to an area twice that of today's Turkey. In other words, Turkey was actually 3 times that size. During the reign of Sultan II, Abdülhamid, it had fallen into a third-rate status. If you are in the era of such an unsuccessful sultan, it is very normal for Europe to think, if we get this Ottoman Empire into a war, we can easily take its lands. At that time, the Ottoman Empire was actually being governed by the Committee of Union and Progress. The Ittihat ve Terakki also did what they did to Sultan II. Abdülhamid, they send him into exile. While sending him into exile, they place a puppet in his stead, someone who is useless, whom they can manipulate as they wish, and who will only remain on the throne for 9 years, eventually passing away at the end of World War I. They pass the throne to Reşat, Mehmet Reşat. However, the real leaders are those in front of the Committee of Union and Progress, such as Kemal Pasha and Enver Pasha. At that time, the Ottoman army is so large that you can't even utilize it. You can't even transfer troops to the front lines. You don't even know what to do with such a large army. If the Ottoman Empire had not entered World War I, because Europe would have ended within itself, the Austro-Hungarian Empire is already dissolving by the end of World War I. If the Ottomans had not entered this war, and if a capable sultan had come to power, perhaps you could have gone and seized the territories that were disintegrating from Austria-Hungary. But, they say, Russia is there, and Russia is watching the Ottomans. Previously, Russia had already attacked and probed the Ottomans. They were already fixated on how to dismantle the Ottoman Empire and what they could do about it. August 2nd, 1914. The Committee of Union and Progress, that is, Tatar Pasha, Kemal Pasha, and Omar Pasha. Even the Pashas do not inform anyone. The Germans are making agreements. We will enter the war with you. The Pasha is of no concern to anyone. The Germans are also placing their generals at the head of all the armies. The Germans are managing the Turkish army throughout the Great World War. The Germans are very clever in Kayseri. It seems that Enver Pasha will do whatever he wants with a snap of his fingers. He is visiting Turkish territories, the Ottoman lands. They are spreading rumors. It turns out that this German, Wilhelm from Kayseri, has become a Muslim, they say. Haji Wilhelm, they call him. At that time, the Ottomans are in conflict with the Russians in the Caucasus. There is a friction. The Germans want to take advantage of it. The Russians know they need to come down from the Straits and enter the war with their navy. The Dardanelles is important for the Russians. Of course, the Bosphorus was significant at the time, but the defense of the Dardanelles is interesting. During this period, the Ottoman Empire had already lost a lot of territory and was mired in a debt crisis due to the public debt administration. The conservatives and reformists of this time believe they are saving the Ottoman Empire. Enver Pasha is 32 years old and married to the Sultan's niece. The Sultan has no real say in the Ottoman affairs. So whatever the Germans say, the Ottomans start to do. There is a general named Helmut von Moltke who wrote letters during that time. The Germans have a grand plan. The Germans actually want the entire Islamic world to attack India as well. Mathematically, it says that since the Arabs also obey the Ottomans, if the Ottomans attack with the entire Arab world, the power of the British in India will decrease. The English are not foolish either. The English are buying Arabs with money since Arabs are among the most characterless societies in history. The English do not stop borrowing. The Germans see this Islamic move. They are going to the Arabs, sending in agents, and so on. Gradually, the Arabs are buying in. After all, the Arabs have a society that sells itself for money. Therefore, the Arabs are also gradually thinking that they can rise up against the Ottomans and free themselves. The English are also inciting these issues, causing the Ottoman territories to become increasingly turbulent. It is not only Russia but also the Ottoman in the Arabian Peninsula. The public is on the verge of fragmentation. People do not want to enter the war, both materially and in terms of understanding. The people are not joining the war and cannot clearly foresee why they would enter it. The Germans want to secure this matter. At that time, the Germans have a navy in the Mediterranean. They have 2 ships named Goben and Braslo. They are quickly bringing their ships into the Istanbul Strait. When they arrive at the Istanbul Strait, they hoist Ottoman flags and throw a feast for all the German soldiers. When the Germans faced the Russian fleet in the Bosphorus, their flags were being lowered. For 2 hours, the Germans play the march, creating the image that the Ottomans and Germans are entering the war together against the Russians. We are reaching a point of no return for the Ottomans. On October 29, 1914, the German ships Goben and Braslo went and bombed 2 Russian ports. Then they bomb another Russian port. By doing this, the Ottoman Empire is officially providing support. After these ships return, Enver Pasha mines the entrance of the Bosphorus in the Black Sea. Therefore, you are telling the world that the Ottoman Empire is at war, and I have sent a message to Russia. They are saying, to declare war against France and England, Enver Pasha is being given £5 million. In the 1877 Ottoman-Russian War, known as the 93 Harbi, the Aya-Stefanos Agreement was signed later, during which the Russians advanced as far as Yeşilköy. I will add some of their photographs to the screen. The Ottomans are driving the 9th and 10th Army Corps to Sarıkamış in the middle of winter. Look, in the middle of winter, over the Allahu Enver Mountains. To encounter the Russian army in Sarıkamış, the Russians are coming from Moscow. These are people coming from -30 degrees. You are sending the Ottoman army beyond Ankara, without a railway, dressed in summer clothes. That's right. There was no railway beyond Ankara at that time. There are no cars, of course. They are going to Sarıkamış mostly on foot and on horseback. They have no boots on their feet. And do you know what is happening? They are losing 60,000 soldiers without even fighting. They are dying from freezing. -30, -25 degrees, trying to cross mountains at altitudes of 2,000, 3,000 meters, Sarıkamış, is a great defeat. At one point during the war, the Russians awaken. They see that the Ottoman soldiers have begun to tire. They are retreating to even colder regions. I have thrown myself into world history twice. The Swedish army froze in Russian lands. Napoleon's army froze in Russian lands. For Enver Pasha, who does not understand or read history, this is a call to action. He tells the army, look, you may not have your boots and coats, but the Russian army is fleeing from you. And he gives a speech to the troops. However, they are pulling to even colder places. Now come here to the story of the Armenian genocide. Armenians lobby very effectively in America, and because they are able to present themselves well, the issue of the Armenian genocide has been sold very effectively, as if it were a reality. During that period, the Armenians also tried to take advantage of the chaos in the region to stab the Ottomans in the back. At that time, while the Ottomans were so entangled, the Russians were also gaining support and trying to strike from behind. They are trying to escape and survive. If you want to hear about the Armenian genocide, from Bernard Lewis. He is a British historian. He has no interest in this matter at all. You can see it when you Google Bernard Lewis. Let me briefly let you hear about the Armenian genocide from his perspective. This is a definition question, and these days there is a lot of misuse of the term genocide. In this case, there is no justification for anything, and I can understand that these people hate this issue. However, in this situation, what has been done regarding the Armenians of the Ottoman Empire has continued until just a short time ago, due to the ongoing nature of the war. The historical context of this situation is complex and multifaceted, involving numerous factors and events that have shaped the current state of affairs. The Armenians of the Ottoman Empire have faced numerous challenges and hardships over the years, which have been exacerbated by the ongoing nature of the war. Many people from Armenia, along with soldiers, also joined the Russian forces in the rear areas to participate in Turkey. We see that Armenia sent participants to wait for a while in the city of Van, and there is a lot of guerrilla warfare in Anatolia. These days we say that Armenia has a national liberation movement against Turkey. The Turks were indeed definitely conducting it with very brave and courageous methods. The Turkish government found it necessary to eliminate the Armenian population from sensitive areas, which required their displacement from all regions of Anatolia, in order to prevent further chaos from arising and ensure stability. They were relocated from these lands. Was this relocation carried out very successfully? Maybe no, maybe yes, but there is no such thing as the Armenian genocide. Genocide committed by America against the Native Americans, by the French in Algeria, and by the Serbs in Bosnia and Herzegovina. What the Greeks did, especially in Cyprus, is referred to as genocide. During this period, Russia naturally told England to either join the war and attack the Ottomans so that we can pass through the straits and dismantle the Ottomans. The English are also attacking Çanakkale by gathering soldiers from the Anzacs, Austria, and New Zealand. Attacking Çanakkale is a very clever plan for them, because they want to take the Straits and Istanbul and gradually dismantle it. However, of course, that doesn't happen so easily, especially since Mustafa Kemal Pasha was in the region at that time. An incredible epic is being written in Çanakkale. This epic is causing the English to be disgraced in the world. The English see that the Ottoman is not as much of a sick man as it is portrayed. The German army is going to the German king with 60,000 German soldiers. They are paying the sheikh at that time. They want to buy 60,000 soldiers for the purpose of attacking India. Emil Pasha says that if they act like this, what will happen to my image of leading the Islamic world and Islamic unity? The Germans say, I will not help you. The Germans say, if you don't want to, then don't. At that time, the Germans were saying to the English, give me 10 million pounds. While the Germans are wondering how they will handle this, it turns out that the English have already bought it. And there is another victory during that period. Its significance is also important as it is comparable to Gallipoli. The English say, let's strike Baghdad. It is an important territory in the hands of the Ottomans, and they are deploying an army towards Baghdad. The Sixth Corps of the Ottoman Empire is blocking this army's advance. The English are retreating to a place called Kut. While they are trying to hold the defense of Kut, the Ottoman army is fighting very well, holding this position effectively, and eventually the English surrender. Kut du la Mare, the Kut victory, was a very important victory because the morale of the English is being shattered for the second time. Over time, of course, you will ask what happened. Kut is unfortunately falling out of Ottoman hands again. Now, if we turn to the front where the Russians are against the Germans, the area that is now Poland was German, and they were bordering the Russians. The war continues here as well. So the Russians are fighting from above, while the Germans are also engaged in battle at the same time. The Russians begin to advance into German territory around August 1914. They advance as far as Tannenberg. The Germans manage to stop the Russians here. But how do they stop them? They are using chemical gas bombs, killing with gas, and they are dropping about 18,000 gas bombs. Thus, the use of chemical weapons in the war also emerges here. During this period, the Germans are providing military support to the Austrians to hold back the Russians. Around 60,000 to 70,000 Jews are being expelled from these lands. Where are those Jews going? At that time, guess, to Palestine? They are settling in Palestine. This is how the Jews, who later took over Palestine, are coming. It is getting closer to the period of World War II. After that, they lose the territories of Palestine. Towards the end of 1915, the Germans and Austro-Hungarians are returning to Serbia. The Serbs are cowards. Because they are cowards, both soldiers and civilians are fleeing to Albania. Serbia is being captured. In 1915, Austria begins to fight against the Italians as well, but unfortunately the Italians are not very skilled in battle. The English are weakening a bit this time by sending support to the Italians. The taste is somewhat spoiled for the Italians when they lose the Isonzo battles. The war is turning here because England and France are sending more soldiers. Austria's advance in Hungary is halted here. By 1916, a line of 700 kilometers is formed down from the North Sea. Europe is being divided. There is a fortress called Verdun here. The Germans are focused on capturing it. The Germans have surrounded their lines in a peninsula shape and are making plans for Verdun Fortress. They say that if we capture the Verdun Fortress, we will break through the French lines and enter. In fact, this is the point at which the Germans lost the war, Verdun. Why? The Germans say that for months in this trench warfare against the French, we just can't get through. If we concentrate the entire war effort on Verdun, we can also focus on the French there and blow it up. But it never happens that way. They can neither capture nor penetrate Verdun, where hundreds of thousands of German soldiers and French soldiers died over the course of months. They capture about 10 castles, but they lose so many soldiers at Verdun that generals are relieved of their duties. The Germans regret entering this foolish plan, asking themselves why they got involved. Imagine 540,000 French die and 450,000 Germans die. And the cost of competing to break through there, and stubbornness is being paid by the loss of 430,000 German soldiers. The Germans realize that they can no longer fight this way, so they are establishing a new line. It is called the Hindenburg Line. This defensive line is easier to hold, and allows you to shift several of the German army's units to a more concentrated line. The Hindenburg Line is already the last defense of the Germans in the war. Once it is broken, the Germans will lose World War I. On March 15, 1917, a revolution occurs in Russia. The Russian Tsar is deposed. Russia is forced to withdraw from the war. The Russians want peace. In this case, the Germans are actually escaping from a front in the war. By 1918, the Germans were already very exhausted. America had entered the war. The American army, even soldiers are coming from Canada. The American army begins to sweep away the Germans in Europe alongside the British and French. The Germans, of course, start to disperse. America is very smart. It joins the war at just the right time. While Europe is already piled up and saying, "Let me take charge and bring down all of Europe," America comes in. The Germans, of course, cannot fight against America. The same will happen in World War II. At that time, the Austro-Hungarian Empire had completely disintegrated. Everyone wants independence. Everyone is taking their own territories. There are no longer any Austro-Hungarians alongside the Germans. The Germans, even if they are not fighting the Russians alone or if peace has been made, are unfortunately fighting the whole world by themselves. There is no help from the Ottomans anyway. What will the Germans do? Bulgaria is providing some support, but because they hate the Serbs? The Bulgarians also collapse on September 28th. They are defeated by the Serbs. Therefore, the Germans have no choice but to give up. Therefore, they are involving America. They say, "Come on, let's make peace with Europe. Let's give up and end this." At that time, the situation was very balanced. The English know that they could eliminate the Germans on their own. But why would they do that? The English people no longer want to fight. France wants to fight. The Germans think they will be a problem in the future, but they can no longer find support. America is saying, "Let's have peace so I can fix my economy in the meantime." As it moves towards the peace table, the business has borrowed more from the French and the English than from the Americans. The Germans want these debts to be paid as well. So, since you are going to a peace agreement, someone has to pay these debts and expenses. They are talking about money. Therefore, there is a significant debt at stake for the Germans as this matter goes to the peace table. Towards the end of the war, the Kaiser is also falling, and democracy is coming to the Germans. Therefore, the great Germans are disappearing, and Austria-Hungary is going as well. The map of Europe is changing incredibly. If you look at the map, you can see how the map of Europe changed at the beginning and the end of the war. Therefore, in December 1918, the German army is returning to Berlin. They do not seem defeated. The people are even very happy. The war is over and they want to experience this feeling. Many new countries are, of course, emerging. Poland is growing by taking land from the Germans and Russia. Czechoslovakia is acquiring land from Austria and Hungary. Serbia is dreaming of its own future. On January 18, 1919, the four major countries, Italy, France, England, and America, gather in Paris for what is called the Council of Four. And the Germans are handed the bill for the war. 440 articles are imposed on the Germans. And on June 28, 1919, which is the same date when the war began on June 28, 1914, with the assassination, exactly 5 years later, an agreement is signed at the Palace of Versailles, and the war comes to an end. This is the bill for the Germans. On October 30, 1918, a bill is also presented for the Ottomans, the Mondros Armistice. With the Mondros Armistice, the rule of the Ottoman Empire is coming to an end in its territories. Thus, we have also brought World War I to a close. We have completed a huge World War I in the World History series. I am Haluk Tatar. See you in the next video.